Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today in War Thunder it is time to be back on the update 1.89 dev server and have a look at the new tech tree that is coming to the game. This is the Imperial Japanese Navy, or the IJN. We're going to have a look at the premiums, then we're going to have a look at the rest of the tech tree, which you can find here. Obviously, being a dev server, a lot of these do not have pictures, and that's completely fine because we're going to go through them anyway, all the way from the Type T14 Reserve to the Fanatical, the only heavy cruiser, or the only labeled heavy cruiser that we have in the game, I should say. Anyway, so let's get stuck into the premiums. This is the destroyer premium that is on offer for the Japanese. It's rank 3, battle rating 4.3, and it is of course the Kyoshimo, which is a Yugumo class destroyer. It has access to three double mounts of 127mm guns, and I should say dual mounts there. You can see that it has the 2 on the front and then the 4 on the booty. Then of course it has the 4 triple stacks of 25mm Type 96s, 10 25mm just set around the place, and a set of dual 25mm Type 96s. Also has access to 8 torpedoes sat here and here in sets of 4. And also depth charges, because why not? Everybody has to have a good depth charge, and this is, where the depth charges are located on this. Doesn't have a lot of armor, since it's a destroyer. Not many destroyers in-game have a lot of armor, but does have a lot of firepower. And to compare it to what it's supposed to be compared to in the tree, it is just flat off better than the standard tech tree equivalent, the Yugumo class, just because of the fact that it has all of the extra guns on it when it comes to AA, and this just doesn't have any of it. It's very sad to me that the premium versions of these ships are just better than their standard tech tree equivalents. This has been happening a long time in ships when you look at all of the premium destroyers. So hopefully in the future this trend stops, but I'm sure it won't. The Kyoshimo is a great pickup to be able to grind through the Japanese tech tree. It will be able to efficiently grind through all of it because it's a rank 3 machine and it only goes up to rank 4. So yeah, its efficiency will be wonderful at that. The other little boat is a rank 2 PG-02, known as a fast attack craft. This is a hydrofoil, born and bred, and it has access to the 20mm rotary cannon on the front of it, which a lot of people have been looking forward to, and also the fact that it has smoke launchers, which is pretty cool, and, well, it's a hydrofoil. It also has room to add some anti-ship missiles on the back of it, which we may see in the future, but nothing is confirmed, and of course it has the engine sat right here. It does have access to the smoke screen and also APDS belts on the 20mm, meaning that if you want to take it to in a very large up tier, then you still will be able to penetrate a lot of stuff that's going on. Just want to show you this in game, just so you get a feel of what it looks like, and also the grenades on it as well. That is exactly the wrong button. Let's try this one. There we go. So it fires the smoke out in front of it, and then they explode in the air, meaning that it covers your sides. You only have one gun on this though, so use it to effect, and give everything a good brrr. Hopefully one day you'll aim down. There we go. It was aiming upwards, and you can see you can just tear apart the enemy ships as you go. Obviously, being a hydrofoil, it is pretty maneuverable in the water, and it's lovely to see this wonderful idea for a design be put into action. For some reason the gun is struggling to come down. There we go. So now that we've targeted the ship, let's let her rip, and you can see it just decimates ships as it feels like. The only thing I found which is a bit of an issue with it is if you're going quite fast, so we're going 80 kilometers an hour and rising. If you fire the smoke grenades out, they kind of land behind you, meaning that they are a little bit useless. But you could definitely do something like this, spread them out, turn into the water, and then of course run away from a target. So that is something you could do. There's also a hole in the front of the ship, right there, which I'm sure is supposed to be there. It would be very odd if it wasn't. But the 20mm or the Vulcan gun is nice, and so is the fact that it gets smoke grenades. Hopefully in the future gets a little bit more usability when it comes to the anti-ship missiles, but right now it's in a great place. You know, it works really well. The reserve that you will get for the Japanese is the Type T14. It has access to one 13.2mm and two 450 torpedoes with a crew of 7. So very close to what we find on the a lot of the reserve machines. And I just want to show you how, well, I suppose Chad-like you would say, the Japanese guy on this is. He literally just sits there on the top and is able to shoot wherever he feels like. He is loving life. Hello, Bernard. How are you doing? So you can see both the torpedoes, they just drop like this, and it's, you know, it's your bog standard reserve. I don't really know what else to say. It has access to a nice gun platform, but it's not going to be one of the ships that's going to take over the game. I still think the American reserve is the best when it comes to the game, but I know a lot of people will like the LS class and everything like that. The Type T1 is the next one in the list, and you can see that it has access to two 7.7mm machine guns and two 450mm torpedoes. The modifications on offer are depth charges once again. They really like the depth charges on all of these machines. I'm still working out if they even have a use yet. But this also has a crew of 7 and a very fast max speed. So very similar to a lot of other PT boats we're seeing at lower tiers. For me, very close to the American ones. And the torpedoes themselves, if you have a look, these are the 450mm Type 44s. They have a maximum speed of 48 kilometers an hour and also an aiming distance of 50mm with a decent amount of explosive mass, so they'll be good enough to put a big dent in whatever you're fighting. The next machine to have a look at is the Type T38. This is a 1.7 machine, and it gets access to the 25mm. That's the main upgrade between this and the one before it. It is made of wood. It does still have the crew of 7, but yes, it has access to that 25mm Type 96 cannon, and the torpedoes are completely the same. The 25mm has access to 40mm worth of pen on the AP, and then also the APIT with the TAIAIAI, which is probably what you want to use at the end of the day. Depth charges, of course, because why not? But yeah, that's the main difference between the Type T and the Type T1. The Karo Tai Type 2 is battle rating 1.7 rank 1, and now we're getting a little bit more gunboaty and a little bit less torpedo-y. So this machine has access to a 37mm and also a 20mm. The 37mm is on the front, whereas the 20mm is sat on the back. It also has access to two really funky looking engines, which are lovely and really well modeled in the game. It also has access to this little thing over here, which is another beautiful feature. And of course, the depth charges are back in the form of 10 of them all over the place. So this is your first technical gunboat when it comes to it for the Japanese. It does have access to HE and also APHE on the 37mm when you use it going forward. The AB Tai Pioneer is one of the goofiest machines in the tech tree. It looks like it's straight out of the Victorian or the Civil War era. It has access to a 37mm on the front. It has access to two 6.5mm. I have no idea why this is battle rating 2.0. Mainly it's because of the fact that it has 6mm worth of armor, and that may put people off. But it has a crew of 10. It also looks like it's just going to get one-shot by some of the larger Soviet caliber guns at this level, and I feel kind of bad for it because it's slow as all hell as well. Modifications-wise, this doesn't even get depth charges. What a horrible scenario for this. And also, something that you may have seen in the modifications, you can't even pick different ammunition. So with the 37, which is mounted on the front here, you only have access to HE, and the 6.5s you only have access to their default belt as well. So there isn't really a lot to look forward to when it comes to this boat. It's not very fast, but I suppose it's kind of small. Maybe that's something to look forward to, you know, silver linings and all that. But the 37 isn't too effective, and neither is the boat itself. The upgrade to the AB TIE Pioneer is, of course, the AB TIE Serial. And this machine looks like, once again, straight out of either the Civil War era or the Crusades, since we have crosses all over it. It has access to a 57mm chode this time instead of a 37mm, and two 7.7mm machine guns, 6mm of armor all over it, and it does have some really interesting little areas on the back, such as the steering gear. It looks really nice on it when you're upside down and dying. Your 57 also has access to some weird rounds. So you start off with HE, which does have some good pen behind it. And then the APHE has about the same pen. It actually has worse pen than the HE, which is absolutely hilarious. And then you have the heat. Why does this thing have heat? Like, what? God damn, the AB TIE Serial is great. It has access to heat because why not? You know, you need 55mm of penetration with this machine against others for some reason. Then moving on, we have the Seiha TIE Model 1. This is the first green boat in the tech tree. It very much looks like a river barge, and it has a 57mm on the front, a 1937 tank cannon, which is probably why some of these machines have heat attached to them, and it also has a dual-mounted 20mm, which is going to be incredibly fun to annihilate anything that you see before you. Basically angle like this and be able to shoot all of the enemies around here. Crew of 10. So nothing kind of crazy, and the engines are incredibly small, and the max speed of this is also quite low. It does have access to depth charges again, because why the hell not? So make sure to not load them on so they don't blow up while you are on it. Then we have the Type 5 moving into Rank 2. This is the first Rank 2 vehicle you'll see, and you can see there's a definite upgrade in camouflage, where we're going dark grey now, and also a wonderful light brown. Also has access to a big donkey gun, which is always fun. So the 75mm Type 88 AA cannon plus two 20mm Type 98 auto cannons. So the donkey gun will be incredibly fun for one-shotting ships. It's also a 2-0 vehicle, so we're looking at like in the area of those Soviet ships which have these large guns. So I'm glad to see that Japan has something very similar to it. So on top of this, depth charges again, you know, 6 of them this time. So we're going a little bit lower, and the the 75 does have access to HE, AP, and also HE with a distance fuse, so HEDF, which will be incredibly fun for this machine to donk on some people. And also, when we look at the X-ray, you can see its engines are absolutely huge, along with its fuel tank and the bridge itself with the radio station. You have the pumps at the bottom here, and of course the steering gear. I am looking forward to this machine just because I want to hit people with this and see what happens to them. The next vehicle is the CH2. This is a slight upgrade over what we saw before. It has a 40mm on the front, a Type 91 AA cannon, and two 25mm. Now, what is interesting about this machine, it has no armor. It does have quite a lot of crew, 65 for a 2.3 ship, so that's going to be hard to knock out. It does have access, of course, to quite a lot of ammunition and fuel. The main interesting thing about it, though, is that these 40mm get access to a wonderful thing, and it is HEDF. Imagine if you had the British 40mm, either the Bofors or something similar, but they had access to HE distance fuse, which means that you fire at the enemy, and then it has a distance that it travels. Once it travels that distance, it blows up, and it can splatter like a shotgun, spread all over the enemy ship. That's pretty much what we're giving this thing, and many other Japanese craft, and it sounds very fun. It also, of course, has the depth charges, because what Japanese machine would would it be? What type of Japanese machine would it be if it didn't have access to depth charges? So the 40mm is the main selling point of this. It is very much similar to the pom-pom with a little bit more ammo. Not so good as the Bofors that we have in the British tree. The CH8, which seems to be an upgrade of the CH that we have before, has a dual set of 40mm Type 91s on the front of it, and also three 25mm at 2.3. Can somebody tell me why this is a 2.3 and this is a 2.3? I'm just saying there seems to be somewhat wrong here with the calculations. Is it because this thing has access to a different types of depth charges? Is that why? Is that why we are setting up in this in this horrible world? It can get 18 depth charges. Whew! It can get 18 depth charges, it has more guns, it has the same amount of speed, and it has slightly less crew. So yeah, it's just kind of crazy. Once again, the DF fuse is available, and I'll just show you what this thing is capable of. If you've never seen DF fuse before, remember that it's available on a lot of higher ships, and it's mainly used to shoot down planes. Now, one of the things about lower levels is stuff has lower armor, right? So if you have a 40mm with distance fuse, it can just annihilate anything that you come across very, very simply. And that's pretty much what this does. You know, you don't really have to worry too much about anything. You just have to throw stuff out there. It'll explode near it and do a ton of damage, and also reload since it's in 100 round clips. And if you want to shoot at planes as well, you know, you can shoot at planes as well. I mean, that plane has no tail, and now it has nothing else because of the the HE distance fuse that is on it. It's basically the HEVT shell, but at a World War II level. Sir, did you just bounce? I'm not... What is going on with you? You're not supposed to bounce. Anyway, so we see this machine here, the motor torpedo boats, and all we have to do is just throw a bunch of 40s in its direction, and it should have a pretty bad time while they blow up. And you can see them all blowing up. Good night, goodbye, good sir. And that is the power of these 40s. Oh, it's going to be so fun using these in the Japanese tree. I'm already looking forward to the carnage that these 40s are going to bring. Then we have the number 13 Type 1944. It has another donkey gun on the front of it, an 8cm Type 88 cannon. Looks like it's straight out of the Victorian era, alongside the three 25mm and a dual set of 13.2mm, which is located on the back right here at a incredibly low level. But remember, it will be able to shoot upwards as they always do, since I believe this is your auxiliary. So is this labeled AA? No, they're all labeled auxiliary. Interesting. Anyway, this is another one of those quite low tier ships, which is going to be quite hard to take out because it has a crew of 80, doesn't have any armor on it, but it's just being able to kill all of those crew can be a bit of an issue. The 80mm I don't have as much faith in as the other donkey gun, just because this only has access to HE, and also it is at a much higher BR. It does get an absolute metric ton of depth charges though. Can you imagine taking these into battle? You are just waiting for the enemy to set your ammunition off. It's as simple as that. But it is a really nice looking machine. The survivability should be good as long as you don't take the depth charges. And the donkey gun, well, sometimes it'll kill him once, sometimes it won't. The next vehicle is the T-51B. This has access to a quad 25mm, which sounds incredibly dangerous until you realize where the screens around it are, meaning that it's pretty much just an AA machine which has access to a bunch of torpedoes. So if I show you in the test drive, I'll show you the issue that this is going to have. So the problem is I can't aim down. The lowest I can go is here, and that is because of this wonderful slab of metal which is there to obviously keep the crew safe, but it doesn't mean that I can use this to a wonderful level. So these 25mm, even though, you know, they'll probably put out a bunch of damage, and are they wobbling? What the hell is going on there? Oh, look at that! Oh, yes! That is wonderful. You see them giving a good shake? Oh my god. God, it's the little things in War Thunder. Look at that. Oh, I'm sorry. But anyway, this has access to torpedoes, 4 of them, which in my opinion is great. You know, 4 torpedoes for a smaller ship is pucker. That's what you're looking for, but it's just a shame that the armament which is on this will not be able to hit anything, at least from a ship standpoint. It's strictly AA. The Type 11 is here. There was actually a dev blog on this maybe last year or the year before. This is one of the standard post-war PT boats that Japanese has, and it is going to be one of the best. It has access to 2 Bofors, which is already something to be afraid of, and 4 533mm Mark 16 torpedoes. So this is very much an Americanized, Britishized machine which the Japanese have, but if you look at stuff like the Dark Class, the reason why they're very good is because of the torpedoes, but also because the Bofors are strong. The armor on this machine does not exist, the X-ray does, and as you can see, the main caliber guns on the front and back are very much there. Then it has quite small engines on it, but there are many of them, so you know, you don't have to worry too much. No depth charges, but it does have access, as I said, to the 40s, either HE or AP. The Bofors, for me, are one of the best naval guns in the game for power output and also for damage output. The hull is 8mm, the superstructure is 4mm, so nothing to really worry about there. It does have a crew of 28, so the survivability might be an issue, but the crew is very much in this area here. So there's quite a large dead zone in this whole boat at the front there. The next machine we're looking at is the Chiguko. Or the Chikugo, I should say, and this has access to a dual mount of 3-inch Mark 33 guns, also a dual mount of 40mm Bofors, and also 6 torpedoes. This is wonderful. This is something I've personally been looking for a long time. This is one of the most modern ships that we have in game. And you can see here, this is where the torpedoes are held in this wonderful thing. And I'll show you, you know, it's in a second in the test drive. The only problem with it is, though, look how this X-ray is laid out. Doesn't this look like there could be a lot of failures here? But anyway, you have the smoke funnels. You have the engines as well leading towards the smoke funnels, but in a central stack, it means that taking that out will cut your power a lot. This 3-inch thing is something to be worried about in the front, bridge and radio station, of course, and when it comes to the armor, there is no armor on this vehicle, which is a surprise. The 76mm, which is of course the 3 inches in the front, have access to HE, APHE, and HEVT, and the torpedoes do not get access to any further modifications, which kind of sucks. So you are limited in that sense. I do want to show you the 40mm and the 76s in action, or the 3 inches, and also how the torpedoes work. So you can see when we hit the torpedo, you can see that it turns, and oh, I've completely... Never mind. Right, so the torpedoes aren't actually where they are. So that area in the back, I'm guessing that is a missile system, whereas the torpedoes are sat in the center. I apologize for it. You can see the you can see the torpedoes in these areas. They definitely don't come out of the tubes, though. Holy hell. But, oh, goodbye, aircraft. But you do have the tubes on the side where the torpedoes come out. Back there is probably a missile system. So yeah, I apologize for that. I'll make sure to, well, correct it in the video like I've done here. Then we have the 3 inches on the front, which unfortunately can't always aim down because of the fact that it does have the front there, but you really shouldn't be targeting stuff which is as close as those are. You can see the reload on these 3 inches is incredibly good, so you should be able to put out a lot of firepower against even larger ships, but the larger ships will eventually outgun you, since you are yourself quite a large ship compared to them, and your guns will also overheat a lot quicker than theirs do, so you do have to watch out for that. Remember, I am running on a crew which is incredibly low, you know, 1 crew skill, so the weapon reload will be a little bit better and the cooldown will be a little bit better, but just understand this is a pretty cool machine. And yeah, the torpedo tubes are here. This is of course the ship missiles that we've talked about. Anyway, Moving on from that, we move on to the destroyers. The first destroyer that you run into is the Matsuki. This has 4 120mm guns, Type 3s, and 2 7.7mm machine guns with 6 610mm torpedoes. Overall, it's a good starter, much better than the British one, so, you know, that's nice. It's got good speed behind it, will be great at dealing with machines which are smaller than it. And it'll struggle, of course, against aircraft, but there isn't really a single first machine when it comes to destroyers in game that doesn't struggle from that. The Fubuki is also here with its 3 sets of dual mounts of 127mm, something that you'll see a lot with these Japanese destroyers. It has 3 13.2mm in dual sets as well, and 9 torpedoes. So this is definitely designed to kill ships. Against aircraft it's going to struggle, which is going to be the problem a lot of these have. They also all have bomb mortars on them, which fire depth charges, which are completely useless. So the next one is, of course, the Yugamo. The Yugamo that we already talked about, the fact that it has three dual stacks of 127mm, along with 2 dual 25s and 8 torpedoes. So it's good, but it's not as good as its premium counterparts. The last one in the line is the Akizuki, which is, of course, the one which is designed for AA defense. It is fast, it has a lot of crew, just like the others. It doesn't have a lot of armor, but it has a lot of firepower behind the guns that it has. So you have the 100mm, 4 of them in dual mounts. So you have 8, then you have 20 25mm, and then 5 triple stacked 25mm. It is crazy how this thing is going to annihilate anything when it comes to the air and any small ship that dares to come near it. On top of this as well, it does have 8 torpedoes set in one set of tubes, so once you actually fire off these 4, they will reload with these torpedoes, and you know, you'll be able to reload and go forward with it. Then of course you have the fuel tanks for armor, and these smoke funnels all leading into one area of this machine. Massive ammo storage in the front, since you know, you have 2 sets of main guns on the front and the back. This will be really fun to use, apart from against light cruisers. So let's get on to those light cruisers that are going to decimate it. The Kuma is here. The heavy destroyer, I think, is the better way of labeling it. It has 7 140mm guns, 2 80mm guns, and 2 6.5mm machine guns with 16 torpedoes as well. So this has a lot of torpedoes, it has good main guns, but it doesn't have, the one thing it struggles with is it doesn't have great AA cover, which is going to be its downfall. It does have access 2 torpedo tubes on each side, you can see right here and you can see right here, and it does have a reload for those torpedoes, which you can see here. And also, since it has 3 stacks, it has a huge area in the center which is just devoted for its engines, and its engines are massive alongside all of its transmissions. I personally think that this is going to dick on destroyers, but it's going to get killed by other light cruisers and planes which are about. When we look at its armor, it does have 63mm in the center, along with some areas which have 32mm to them, and also 45mm in those other areas, and 29mm in a cheeky middle ground, meaning that you know, it will cover the engines if they decide to go crazy, or it will stop the spread of damage from specific shells. Overall, great against destroyers, not so good against light cruisers. The Kako, the IGN Kako, it does have 6 200mm guns on it, and then 4 120mm guns, 2 25mm dual sets, and 24 torpedoes. 24 torpedoes. This thing, look at this. Look how they're all set up. Isn't that amazing? 24 torpedoes. And you want to see how these torpedoes are fired? I think I'll show you before we move on, just because it's kind of crazy how they're set up, and I really like the fact that they are set up like they are. So as you can see, the problem with the torpedoes is you can't actually move them. They are stuck in position, and when you fire them, they fire out the side of the ship, which is really cool. Now you can see another one which is thrown out, and it is actually reloading. You can see another area here where it just throws them out of the ship. Basically, where any of those holes are that you see, torpedoes get thrown out and then reloaded. It's a really cool system. It's really interesting, and I'm happy that you know, this actually came to game just for this reason alone, because you can reload your torpedoes and at the same time have a lot of fun. So it's just, you know, you're going to have to move the ship to aim the torpedoes, but generally I do that anyway, so it's not that much of a big deal. Then of course you have all of the main guns, which like to sing hallelujah. Oh, it's meaty. It's very meaty on this ship, isn't it? Ooh, but the reload, look at that reload. The reload is not a forgivable one. Let's just say that. It basically means that you're going to have to use your torpedoes very wisely to go after enemy ships, and if you are donking on people with these 200mm, make sure that you donk on them. Then we have the 203mm right here, plus some APC stuff, so if you're struggling to pen over light cruisers, you can do that. The 120s have HE and also HE with a distance fuse. The 25mm keep their default belts, which are only tracer bullets, showing that they may have issues killing anything. The 5.3 Kako has access to some wonderful guns and to some wonderful mechanics, and I hope they get expanded upon in the future. The next vehicle that we're having a look at is the Agano. The Agano has 3 dual sets of 15cm or 150mm guns. It has 2 sets of dual mountings of 80mm guns. It has 4 sets of triple mountings of 25mm guns and 2 sets of dual mountings of 25mm guns, plus 16 torpedoes. We are here to play, ladies and gentlemen, with the Agano, and look at it. It looks absolutely stunning. Beautiful machine when it comes to it, and also has 60mm worth of belt armor. So it's not as strong as other light cruisers which are around the place, but it does have 700 members of crew on top of the ridiculous amount of guns and the ridiculous size of guns that this thing has. I am very much looking forward to seeing how this thing goes. Of course, it has reloads when it comes to its torpedoes, something that is wonderful to see with this ship and many others from the Japanese Navy. The 152mm or the 150mm, as it says, have access to 2 types of HE round. You've got one with a base fuse and one without. Then you've got access to a distance fuse. 76 have the distance fuse and the normal HE. 25s, unfortunately, tracer belts. But this looks incredibly fun to use. I can't wait to see it in battle. And then the heavy cruiser to end it all, to the first technical heavy cruiser that we have in game, even though there are other light cruisers, labeled light cruisers, which are technically heavy cruisers, depending on what standards that you move on. It is the Furutaka, the first Gaijin labeled heavy cruiser. It has 3 sets of dual mounts 200mm, 4 120mm and 6 dual mounts of 25mm alongside 16 torpedoes. It has citadel armor of 105mm in the center alongside 76mm here. There you go, there's the 105, here is the 76, then you've got of course the 52mm alongside the ridiculous ammo bays that these 200mm need. Look how much look how big this thing is. It actually has less crew on it than the ship before it. It only has 680, but my god, the guns are going to make the biggest difference. 200mm guns is insane when it comes to it. The largest guns, I believe, in game when it comes to ships, and yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Same speed as well as your light cruisers, same speed as your destroyers, so have fun with that when this thing is barreling down on you at a hell of a rate of knots. It also has access on its 200s. If you are not happy with the HE and you're not penning, well, you have a round which pens 364mm maximum. It's just a generic APBC shell, but it will put a large hole in whatever you decide to put a large hole in. The 120mm guns only have 50mm worth of penetration, but they do get a distance fuse, meaning that planes will not be able to get close and you'll annihilate any destroyers and smaller ships which are near you. Default, unfortunately, on the 25mm. This is a beautiful machine. This is now one of the top dogs when it comes to naval. I hope a lot of people grind out the Japanese tree to get to this, to have a lot of fun with it. Anyway, that is the Japanese naval tree in its entirety. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, John Ryman, Martinez, Matity, Moxie, Nito, Nick Graham, Alobralo, Sebastian Corona, Super Cacti, and Elove Goats and Seductive Trashcan for supporting the channel.